Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys part 1 of my Beatles and Paul McCartney book collection. Someone asked me a while back to do a video showing my books to you guys that are Beatles related, and so I thought today is just as good as any. Why not do it? So I'm going to start. I do have some vintage ones that I'm going to start with first, and this one is called Beatles Up to Date, and it is I believe it just deals with recent Beatles news. Well, I say recent to 1964, but it also has different little stories about other bands and stuff as well. Let me find some pictures for you guys without tearing this book up. It has a section about each Beatle. And sort of like the story of how the Beatles formed. It's coming apart, that's not good. There's that one. Next I have The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, and this is literally the film A Hard Day's Night put into book form. So it's kind of like a fan fiction if I'm gonna be honest, but it literally is the movie. I don't think there are any pictures. Well, hang on, I think I lied about that. Yeah, here there are some pictures in here. It's kind of hard to show that. I don't remember reading through this whole thing, but what I did read of it was really cool because there are scenes in it that are not in the movie itself, so it's almost like getting to read the deleted scenes. So this is really cool. Next I have the Beatle book, and again it's just a vintage look at the Beatles, or the Beatles as they were kind of talked about in the 60s. So I mean now it's vintage, but it wasn't then. But yeah, there's some nice pictures. And again it goes through each Beatle, talks about each one. Some of the stories I'm not sure are true, some of them are rather fantastical, but either way, it's interesting and entertaining because, you know, when you're a Beatle fan, you're a Beatle fan, and everything is interesting. There's that one. Next I have The True Story of the Beatles. I can't remember if it was Paul McCartney there was a picture of Paul reading this book. I think it was him, it could have been John Lennon, but one of the Beatles, there's a picture of him reading this book, so that was why I kind of was interested in it. I like all of these books I got off of eBay, but this one I got off eBay, and I think it was like $9, so none of these were too expensive, but it is very interesting because it does tell the story of how they formed and, you know, just their very early career and such. I love this picture here at the bottom, it's so funny. You can't really see it though. There we go. John's making fun of Paul. Love that. But yeah, I have not read this entire book. I tend to, with biographies, I'll kind of like skim certain parts that I'm interested in, so that's kind of what I did with this one, but there's that one. Next I have The Beatles Help, and just like the Hard Day's Night book, this is the film Help, novelized if you will. Again, it has some like deleted scenes that were, so to speak, but it's very funny, it's very fun to read, and it does have some pictures in here. And interestingly enough, whoever had this book before me had took this little picture of cartoon Paul. So, but they accidentally wrote on the back George, but I've seen the cartoon and this is very clearly Paul McCartney, but Thought that was really funny. Okay, now we're gonna get out of the vintage Beatles books and get into some newer ones. This book here, this is the Definitive Guide to the Beatles. This was the very first book I ever got, and it was actually, it came in a little tin that I have setting up on my shelf over there. I should have grabbed that to show you, but I'll show it to you later. But this is an introductory guide to the Beatles. So they go through each one and give some information, and then just the Beatles and their career in general. So for somebody who knew nothing about the Beatles, this was a really cool thing, and it still is. But it brings back so many memories just looking through these pictures and stuff of me listening to their music for the first time and reading about them and wanting to know everything I could about how they were so successful. Next I have Meet the Beatles Again, and this is a book of interviews, some of which are from Paul McCartney and George Harrison, I believe, and then most of them are just interviews that other musicians did on the Beatles, so like as a topic of conversation. For some reason I really butchered that description. But yeah, so like it has like an interview with Linda McCartney, and I know there's one with Paul McCartney. The Rolling Stones are in here. Let me just show you a few. Those are all the folks in this book. All the folks featured in this book. So yeah, you have George Harrison, Louise Harrison, Linda and Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, Yoko Ono, Julian Lennon, George Martin, etc., etc. Show you through some of this. I have Ticket to Ride by Larry Kane. He was I believe he was a reporter who followed the Beatles around on their American tours, and these are some of the stories, some of his experience with the Beatles and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. There's some pictures. Larry Kane, though, he did tend to favor John Lennon, so I mean, it's not like he talked bad about the other three, but even when John Lennon was kind of rude to him, he kind of excused it and said that it was funny and all that. And then when Paul McCartney would be extremely nice to him, he would make fun of him a little bit for being too nice. So, you know, it's not a bad thing, it's just it was a little biased, and I don't really care for that. But I mean, oh, there goes my bookmark. Oh well. But anyway, I get this is just his experience and that's his take on it, but personally I just I like it to be a little bit more not biased. But the cool thing is that it came with this CD in the back of some interviews that he did conduct with the Beatles, so you can read about some of the interviews and then actually listen to them, so that's really cool. There's that one. Here I have some Paul McCartney books. This is Paul McCartney Many Years From Now by Barry Miles. I haven't read through this entire book because, I mean, it's really thick. But again, with biographies, like I said, I tend to just pick a few stories that I'm interested in, or a few parts of their lives that I'm interested in, and then go from there. But yeah, this is a really huge book spanning most of Paul's career. It's almost impossible to read through the whole thing. I am making a mess with this cover, my goodness. I thought there were pictures in here, but I guess I'm wrong on that. There's that one. My other big Paul McCartney book, Paul McCartney, The Life by Philip Norman. I prefer this one over Many Years From Now, but that's just me. This is more written in the form of a biography, whereas the other one is written more, it's kind of like compilations of Paul's like interviews that Paul did. That anyway, this one's written just a little bit more interestingly, if that's what you want to call it. But yeah, it's got some pictures. But yeah, it goes through Wings and the Beatles and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I really like this book. All right, now I'm gonna get into some coffee table books. Here I have Images of the Beatles, and these are all, well, exactly what it sounds like. they're all pictures. These are really good quality pictures, like super good quality. And it goes through all the years that the Beatles were together. Next I have, I think the most recent release from the Beatles, The Beatles Get Back. And this is pretty much like the dialogue from the film, although it does include some deleted scenes, if you will. So this is very interesting. It's a very good glimpse into how the Beatles worked together and in the studio. I just had a whole lot of fun looking through this and reading it. And finally, in part one of my Beatles book collection, I have the Beatles Anthology. This is again a huge book. I think I found this for like $4 on eBay. But it is a big boy. Big boy. And I have never read through the entire thing, unfortunately, but it's just like, it's like a Beatles textbook, honestly. It's just huge. It goes through all the years of the Beatles' careers and then each of them separately. At the beginning, they have a short biography of each one. So yeah, a lot of the stories that you hear from the Beatles are probably mentioned here in the anthology. A nice picture here. But yeah, there's that one. That was part one of my Beatles book collection. I will, of course, be doing a part two because I can't start something and not finish it. But I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I appreciate it if you've already subscribed and if you're a usual commenter or if you usually like. I just really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.